Hey everybody, this is my 20-gallon open-topped office tank, and the other day I brought home some plants from Prettyboy Reservoir. I've been trying to identify them, and I shot a video this morning where I narrowed down that sort of feathery looking plant to the possibility of an invasive species commonly referred to as parrot's feather, or possibly hornwort. And I still don't really know which one it is, to be honest with you, so I'm not sure. We're going to put that one on hold for the time being. The other one I talked about, but we didn't get a really good look at, was this one, and that was identified for me by one of my viewers. Goes by the very, very original common name of curly pondweed, and I like that a lot. So we are going to go back out to the reservoir again today, get a look at that feathery looking plant, and we're going to see what we can do about finding some more plants. I'm definitely going to collect up some more of this stuff, probably going to collect more of this too. I really like that a lot now that I've seen it in the aquarium. It probably grows insane. It's generally referred to as pondweed or curly pondweed, and it can float and grow in mats on the surface. So anything that grows like that is generally going to be something that is real easy to grow in the aquarium, and I'll probably spend more time cutting it out of my aquarium than I have growing in it. Just like the water sprite just grows like crazy once you get it in a nice well-lit environment. So those are the two we are going to go look for that we've already got. There is another one that I've been seeing out there. I talked about it quite a bit in the other videos, and I said I believe it to be some sort of anacris species. And so I looked on YouTube this morning and I found some people that had something similar to it just by accident. I was actually looking up this stuff, and they had this other stuff in their tank, and they mentioned it, and they called it Alodia. And so I looked up Alodia, and Alodia is just another name for anacris. But there are a lot of different species of it. There's about 6 of them that are common, and there's several that actually grow in this area. So I'm determined to find some of that. I've talked about it. I always say that it grows everywhere. I see it back there all the time, and ever since then I haven't seen any of it yet anywhere. So today we're going to get out on the kayak, and we're going to go and see if we can find some of that Alodia, or anacris, whatever it is, and we're going to see if maybe we can identify the exact species of it. Again, there's about 3 or 4 different species that grow in this region of North America. I'm sort of central East Coast here in Maryland, and the anacris is actually native to North America and has subsequently been spread all over the place, but it started here in North America, so you can thank us for that. Again, we're going to get more of this curly pondweed. We're probably going to get more of that, and we are going to go look for that anacris. So sit tight, give me a little bit to get everything together, and I will see you all out on the water. But I did find what we're looking for, and that is all of this weed right here is that stuff that I think is anacris or something similar. I was trying to reach down and get it, and I couldn't. I remembered I got my net behind me, so let's see if we can pull some of it up. There we go. So that is what I keep talking about, saying it looks like anacris. That is what I believe is the plant we're looking for. So let me scoop a bunch more of this up. Got it everywhere around here now. Well, I finally found it. So there's a little bit right there. And for everybody that's asked me about whether or not I quarantine this, or am I worried about putting it in my tank after just bringing it right out of the ground like that, I considered it. It's something that I've thought about. We can have a conversation about that in an upcoming video. But for the most part, no, I'm not too worried about it. Now, that might be one of those, famous last words. I'm going to regret saying that at some point. but we'll see. So, alright, I'm glad I remembered I had my net behind me. And of course now I just got it stuck in my hook on one of my fishing rods behind me, but that's okay. We're going to go ahead and move on out of here. Alright, we are back here and we scored. I found some of the plants I'm looking for. They are actually out in the water. We're going to have a look at them in just a moment. But the first thing I want to do is start looking at some of the terrestrial plants. And one of the things I thought about as we were pulling up in here is how shady it is. We've got stuff like this. This is Christmas fern. I've got that in the yard. Of course, moss. You know, I've got that in the yard. This fern, I have no idea what this kind of fern is called, but I've got this by the bucket loads in my yard. My fern garden area is that kind of fern. Just, I think of that as just common fern. I have no idea what it actually is. We've also got this stuff. I don't know what that is, but I see this growing in the woods a lot. It's low growing, but it always grows under the canopy in full shade. I've never seen that in any location that gets any sun at all. So as we walk around and we come back towards where the stream flows in, and this may not even be a stream that flows year round. There's lots of wood around here, but none of it looks particularly good. It's part of a bench. Yeah, I'm definitely not seeing any wood that I find too terribly interesting while we're back here. Alright, well, there's definitely a little stream flowing in. And we've got some sensitive fern right here. That's what this is. I've got that in the yard. Got these weeds. There's just nothing really of interest to think about bringing in back here. We got some cattails over there. I think cattails might be a bit excessive. Let's see what this is. This looks like... Oh, I'm glad I'm wearing my boundary boots today. Kind of figured I'd be doing something like this, so I decided I'd wear them. If you're not familiar with my boundary boots or my boundary shoes, I'll put a link down below. These things are fantastic. They're for doing just exactly this kind of thing, in and out of the water, walking on land, walking over rocks and gravel, and keeping your feet dry all the while. I don't know what that is. I don't know if that's some kind of grass. Well, it definitely comes up with roots, but it's also on a runner. So I don't think that's grass. I'm not sure what this is, but you know what? Let's take a little bit of it home. Do I want to take this home? I don't even know what it is yet. And that is awfully big to go in my... No, I think we can do better than that. I don't think we're going to take that with us. Alright. I like the beaver's handiwork right there. This is just creeping Jenny. I've got this all over the yard too. I could actually bring some of this home. This will go in the waterfall area nicely. And there's certainly plenty of it to be had. Alright, so we definitely scored by coming back into this little area. Lots of creeping Jenny. Alright, let's try to get through all this muck without breaking my neck. Alright, now we're going to walk out in the water and get some of that other plant that I was talking about that's sort of spiky looking. We saw a couple little pieces of it. There's a bunch of it growing right under the water surface out here. Let's add that to the collection. So most of what we've got out here is all this horrible stringy crap. Of course you can't see anything in the camera, can you? Most of what we got is all this stringy crap that we went through before. We've also got a lot of this. that is not spiky. You know, it doesn't feel bristly per se, but compared to that other stuff that feels so fine and feathery, this actually feels like it's got, you know, a little bit of texture, a little bit of stiffness to it. Again, that's not anything that I would call spiky, but it's definitely interesting. So we've got that. We don't need any more of it, but we got loads more of that anacris, so I definitely found a mother load of that. And if I can get out there without getting my boots wet, I think it's a little too deep. You can't see anything in the water. Let me see if I can put my glasses over the lens. You can kind of see in there a little bit more, but you see all that stuff out there, all that darkness you can see is more of that spiky green stuff. So here's more of it right here. I don't even have to go that far out. So we will definitely be taking this home, and we still need something to go in the waterfall tank, and I've got an idea of what I want to put in there. I've seen it out here before. It's a particular type of grass that grows right on the shoreline, and most grasses either need or can, at the very least, can tolerate high light. So, I wish I could get out there or here. You can kind of see that in the camera. All this real dark green stuff is that spiny stuff we've been talking about. And there's yet again another tire. I don't know if you saw it in the last segment of video where we just came from, back up the far end of that cove. There was a tire in the end of that cove, there was a tire in the end of the first cove we went into, and there's a tire right there. So we are hat tricking on the tires today. Let's see if we can find another one. I just saw some little tiny baby fish out here too. I'm not sure what that even was. It was so small. It was something that I would classify as fry rather than a small fish. All right, we're going to get back to it. I got to back out of here, and I will probably just use my hands as we go. And, well, I don't know, again, if you can, how well you can see in there. All this green stuff out here is that stuff we're trying to get, and so I'm going to go ahead and scoop some of that out as we go through. And then we'll go out this way, make a right, go out into the main channel, and we'll see where we go from there. So sit tight, and I'll see you on around the bend. All right, here we are back at the house on Monday morning, and we're going to go have a look at some of this stuff once I get it inside. I don't know if we need to actually have a look at it like sitting on the washing machine or something. I think we're getting a good enough look at it here. But I brought home a bunch of this little spindly stuff, and again, for anybody that knows what hornwort is, we've been having this discussion whether this stuff is, you know, spiny and spiky enough to be considered hornwort. One thing I have noticed about this, and you can see by the piece I just picked up, it seems to be really brittle, and that's why I was not able to collect up any big clumps of that. And I always seem to have trouble finding it, is whenever I pick a piece of it up, it just comes apart in my hand and breaks into little bits and chunks. See, there's some more of it. And I was never able to get it in any kind of substantial growing plants. It just breaks into these little pieces. Now, presumably, each one of these little pieces will float away and start growing in its own right. So I think I'm going to do that with this stuff. I think I'm just going to throw it in a tank and let it float and see what happens. The anacris, what I liked about this was it seemed to be pretty dense and compact, and it stayed down in the bottom of the water. It didn't grow up to the surface, and that's what I'm afraid, you know, all this feathery stuff and the other stuff that I planted is going to do that. Even the this stuff that I got, the crinkly pondweed, that will grow long strands that will find the surface no matter how deep the water is. I mean, this stuff was growing up out of 15 feet of water, so I know it will find the surface in any aquarium I put it in. As far as the creeping jenny goes, that is probably going to go down in my waterfall tank. So let me get started on all this and get some stuff in some different tanks, and then we will go inside and we will have a look at all the various tanks and see what I put where. All right, everybody, let's see if I can remember where I put everything and go over everything we've done so far. I got most of the plants separated. I'm not too keen on using that little sort of breaking apart spiky stuff that I don't really know what it is. But I did put a little bit of it in this tank. No, I'm sorry, I didn't. I'll show you where I put it in just a minute. I put a little bit of it in this tank. And you can just about make it out right there. It's already got a snail hanging out on it. So I put just a few little broken pieces of it in there. And then I put a few little pieces of it in here. The reason being is that it was in a low light setting where we just saw it in that tank, and now it is directly underneath of my floodlight right there. So that's a fairly significant amount of lighting. It's not full sun amount of lighting, but that will get a fair amount of light, and so it'll be interesting to see if one does better than the other. The other thing I did was I added some anacris into this tank. I have been absolutely loving watching the tetras swim in and out of that feathery looking stuff. Again, I'm not sure what that is. I want to say it's a species of milfoil, but again, until I really know for sure, I'm just going to call it that feathery looking stuff. And in most cases, this is all just academic for me anyway. I don't care what that stuff's called. It would be interesting to know, just so I know what to call it, but, you know, it is what it is. It's that stuff in my tank, and it looks like that. And if it grows and does well, then great. And if it doesn't, then, well, it didn't, and it was just that stuff. The name of it, to me, is really not that important. It's just, you know, not that big of a deal. So, that looks awesome. I love it. I tucked a little bit of the anacris in underneath of that rock. We've already seen the two places I put that little bit of spindly stuff, whatever that is. I also put a bunch of that creeping Jenny right there, which was the intention when I picked it up. That was where it was going to go. I sprinkled a little bit of potting soil up and around a few of the pieces. I separated it all out and found a few of the longer strands that already had some roots developed on them. I was kind of careful when I pulled it out of the ground to make sure I got some roots. Now, creeping Jenny, you can just lay it across the ground and it will put roots out and start growing. But if you can start with some established roots, even if they've been sort of shocked and pulled out of the ground, it's still better than starting without any roots at all. So this little clump is all the rooted stuff, and then there's some soil on top of that. This is a separate little clump with sort of some medium length pieces, and there's a little bit of handful of soil on that. And then this stuff over here is actually just sort of tucked in underneath of my bird's nest fern there. And of course there's all kind of goopy stuff and soily crud and whatnot underneath of there. There's plenty of, you know, juicy stuff for the roots to root into under there, and it'll hold it in place. I also did a water change on this tank. I, you know, shuffled the plants around just a little bit to give it a little bit of a different visual appeal, but that's not really what the point of this video is. The other anacris is right here. Put a little bit of that in my 55. And I also put a little bit of it in here in my New World tank. Now, I want to point out a few things, and if you're still with me, I don't know whether this is going to be a long version, short version. I shot so many clips yesterday, I'm not exactly sure how I'm going to edit this together. But if you're still with me, I want to point out that, as I've mentioned before, there's, you know, I didn't quarantine this stuff. I rinsed it off. I soaked it in water overnight, you know, a bucket of water on the back porch. I rinsed it off in the faucet before I brought it in here. But I didn't sterilize it. I didn't put any hydrogen peroxide, or I didn't salt the water or anything like that. I just gave it a good rinse. And I think I'm going to be okay. I'm not particularly concerned, but I do want to make it clear that I am taking a risk when I do that. It's not a guarantee just because I don't think anything is going to go wrong with that, and I didn't bring any microbes or parasites or any unwanted guests into the tank. Doesn't mean I didn't, and I very likely may have just contaminated several of my tanks. Well, and I say very likely. That's not very likely, and that's my point, is I don't think it's very likely, or I wouldn't have done it. If I thought I very likely just, you know, did that to my tanks, I obviously wouldn't have done that. But it is a possibility. So remember that. I am taking a risk. I just think it's sort of a calculated risk. I'm not too concerned about it, but it is definitely a risk. So if you're thinking about going out and grabbing some, plants and stuff you see floating in the stream or a pond or something near your house, you can do that, but you are definitely taking a risk at contaminating your tank if you don't quarantine it or treat it or whatever beforehand. Again, I'm going to shoot a whole video where I talk more at length about that and why I didn't and my philosophy behind all that kind of stuff and why I'm willing to take those risks, etc., etc. The other thing I want to point out is I've tried this before. I was thinking about this the other day, and I hadn't really thought about it in a long time. But when I first started keeping fish, I tried a little bit of everything. I was all kinds of excited about free fish and free plants, and I was collecting all kind of minnows and setting up all kind of little 10-gallon native tanks and whatnot. And quite often I had tried that anacris. Again, I had no idea what it was called. It was just a plant that I could grab for free. It always seemed to melt. It never really did anything other than just sort of dissolve away and break apart and so on and so forth. So I don't know if that's going to be the case with this or not. I'd kind of forgotten about that until I was going through my comments this morning, and somebody else mentioned that when they did it, they had the same result. When they put these native plants in their tank, they always seem to find that they just sort of melted away. So I don't know. If that's the case, then I'll just have some stuff in my tank that I need to deal with and get out of there. That's the least of my concerns. I would be much more, concerned that I might have brought home some sort of protozoan parasite or something like that. Again, I don't think it's terribly likely. Much more likely that I brought home new strains of algae that I've never had in my tank before, and now I'm going to have different types of algae growing in the tank or something like that. That might be something we have to deal with here in the fairly near future. I don't know, but I'm not terribly concerned, once again, about bringing home, I think somebody mentioned leeches or, other stuff like that. Macro parasites like leeches, I'm not concerned about at all. If I see leeches hanging off the side of the fish, I think I'll know how to deal with something like that. It would be, a different story as my fish just start dying suddenly and I have no idea what happened. And it turns out I brought some kind of, disease into the tank that I didn't know what it was or whatever. That would be my real concern. Anyway, I feel like I'm rambling at this point. We will talk about that at length in another video. But that's all I did with all the plants we got. I was a little reluctant, to put any of that curly stuff anywhere. I've already got some of that upstairs. I may add a little more to sort of bulk up the patch I put in there, but I've already got it in that tank, and I don't really want to overcrowd any of these other tanks with new plants just yet, so we're going to sit with what we've got, wait, see what happens, and then we can always go from there. It's not like I don't know where I can just go get some more anytime I want it. So, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed that adventure with me. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any more of them. Don't forget, this one here is my waterfall tank, and I will see you real soon in the next one.